For 2 decades, audiences were enthralled with Gunsmoke, an iconic fixture of American television that transported them through the rough and tumble world of the Old West. However, despite its enormous popularity, the show abruptly ended, not because of declining viewership, but rather because of a single, extremely contentious scene that sparked a national outcry. This scene sparked discussions that had an impact on the entire business, in addition to testing the bounds of what constitutes appropriate television programming. In this in-depth analysis, we deconstruct the crucial point that precipitated Gunsmoke's unanticipated cancellation and examine the long-lasting effects it had on the television industry. Gunsmoke's ascent to the top. The early years of television were dominated by westerns, which were more than just a genre. They were a cultural phenomenon that emerged at that time. Television programs like The Lone Ranger and Hopalong Cassidy laid the groundwork for the television series Gunsmoke, which would go on to revolutionize the genre. During the 1950s, the American people were captivated by the stories of lawmen, outlaws, and tough cowboys, and Gunsmoke was ready to carry this interest to new heights. The origin of the game of Gunsmoke. The television show Gunsmoke was initially conceived of as a radio program by writer John Meston and producer Norman Macdonald. It was not until 1955 that the show was adapted for television consumption. In direct contrast to the more sanitized depictions of the American frontier that were shown in earlier westerns, the creators of the film attempted to represent the American frontier in a manner that was more genuine and gritty. This unwavering dedication to genuineness distinguished Gunsmoke from other films of its era and established the groundwork for the show's subsequent popularity. Marshal Matt Dillon. Gunsmoke revolved around Marshal Matt Dillon, who was portrayed by James Arness. He was the show's protagonist. In addition to being a man of principle, Dillon was also aware of the harsh reality of his surroundings. He was a multifaceted guy. However, it was his times of vulnerability that endeared him to viewers. His stern demeanor and unwavering sense of justice made him a hero to audiences. But it was his moments of vulnerability that made him popular. Dillon was not a perfect hero. He was a man who was burdened by the weight of his obligations and who was frequently compelled to make tough decisions in a world where good and wrong were not always clear-cut. Rather than only being sidekicks. In addition to Dillon, the production included a remarkable ensemble cast, each one of which contributed a different level of complexity and nuance to the performance. A powerful female presence was provided by Amanda Blake in the role of Miss Kitty, the shrewd proprietor of the saloon in a world that was controlled by men. Doc Adams, played by Milburn Stone, provided insight and a sense of right and wrong, while Chester Good, played by Dennis Weaver, and Festus Hagen, played by Ken Curtis, contributed humor and humanity to the narrative. The ongoing popularity of the program can be attributed, in large part, to the interplay that existed between the members of the group. A different kind of Western. Not only did Gunsmoke focus on gunfights and outlaws, but it also explored the human condition, which made it stand apart from other television shows. Justice, morality, and the struggle to survive in a harsh environment were some of the difficult topics that were discussed in the play. The psychological toll of life on the frontier was frequently investigated in episodes, which included depictions of the problems of both lawmen and outlaws, as well as the struggles of the townspeople who were caught in the middle. This emphasis on character development and moral ambiguity struck a chord with viewers, elevating Gunsmoke to the level of a meaningful investigation of the American experience rather than merely being another Western. The evolution of Gunsmoke. The television show Gunsmoke has developed over the years to accommodate the shifting preferences and anticipations of its viewers. The show transitioned from having half-hour episodes to having hour-long episodes, which enabled the show to develop characters and storylines that were more intricate. In addition, it started addressing subjects that were more controversial and socially relevant, which was a reflection of the larger cultural transformations that occurred during the 1960s. Even though other westerns were beginning to disappear from the television landscape, Gunsmoke was able to maintain its relevance and popularity because of this progression. a showdown like no other. Even though it was simply another shootout in Dodge City, the scene that would ultimately lead to the end of Gunsmoke was quite significant. The show's drive to push limits and the network's need to maintain a certain level of decorum had culminated in this moment, which was the result of years of conflict between the two parties. It was a moment that represented a degree of violence and brutality that had never been seen on television before, and it left viewers in a state of shock. The reasons why this scene was special. This scene was not only controversial due to the physical violence that occurred in it, it was also controversial due to the emotional and psychological impact that it had on the characters as well as the audience. Those who watched the event were compelled to confront the more negative parts of human nature, as well as the harsh reality of living in the traditional American West. At that moment, there was a moment of storytelling that was unfiltered and visceral, which questioned the sanitized narratives that had been prevalent on television up to that time. How the audience reacted. Almost immediately and with great vigor, people responded to the situation. While several viewers were applauding the show for its audacity and authenticity, a significant number of others were horrified by it. Several people felt that the sequence was a violation of the show's fundamental principles, and it triggered a debate all over the country regarding the appropriateness of violence in the entertainment industry. CBS received a flood of letters from viewers, with some of them demanding that the show be canceled and others defending the show's creative integrity. The function of watchdogs in the media. The debate that surrounded the incident rapidly grabbed the attention of advocacy groups and media watchdogs, who regarded it as a great example of the risks that may arise from unregulated violence on television. It was maintained by these organizations that such content was damaging, especially to younger viewers, and they advocated for more stringent controls over what may be shown on television. The influence of what the public thinks. The aftermath of the event was significantly impacted by the opinions of the general public. Not only was the uproar directed at the substance of the show, but it also encompassed broader worries over the impact that television has on society. Parents, religious organizations, and community leaders had the opportunity to express their concerns, which resulted in a groundswell of criticism that the network was unable to ignore. Art and responsibility. The situation was a nightmare for CBS in terms of public relations situations. On the one hand, Gunsmoke was one of the most successful shows of all time, boasting a devoted fan base and exceptionally high ratings. On the other side, the backlash posed a risk of damaging the reputation of the network and driving away advertisers. It was a difficult choice for the network to make. Either they would adhere to the artistic vision of the show, or they would give in to the pressure from the public and risk losing a big chunk of their viewership. Meetings of the network. Behind closed doors, executives from CBS discussed the future of the show Gunsmoke. The meetings were heated, with some individuals lobbying for the continuation of the show, while others argued that the uncertainty caused by the issue had rendered it impossible to continue. The choice was made even more difficult by the fact that Gunsmoke was more than just a show. It was a cultural institution, and the cancellation of the show would have serious repercussions. To summarize, the bottom line. There were substantial creative and moral grounds in favor of canceling Gunsmoke, but ultimately, financial factors were the most important factor in the decision to do so. The show was expensive to produce, and the unfavorable press was beginning to influence advertising income. Because other westerns were already seeing a decrease, CBS concluded that it was time to bring the show to a successful conclusion rather than risk losing more of its brand. Surprise for the supporters. The discontinuation of Gunsmoke came as a surprise to the show's viewers, many of whom had been watching the show since they were children. In response to the statement, there was a range of emotions, including rage, despair, and astonishment. A great number of viewers considered Gunsmoke to be more than simply a television show. It was an integral part of their lives, and the abrupt termination of the show was like the passing of an old friend. A call to action is issued to networks. The controversy that surrounded the television show Gunsmoke served as a wake-up call for the television and film business. The networks started paying more attention to the content that they were broadcasting, and several of them created more stringent restrictions to prevent issues of a similar nature. The episode brought to light the influence of public opinion as well as the necessity for networks to strike a balance between the freedom of creativity and the responsibility to the community. The introduction of ratings for content. It was in the wake of the debate surrounding Gunsmoke that the television industry started to struggle with the necessity of content regulation. Even though straightforward censorship was not the solution, the incident sped up debates regarding the establishment of content ratings, which are analogous to the rating system used in the film industry. These talks eventually resulted in the introduction of TV content ratings, which were designed to give viewers, particularly parents, more information regarding the nature of the programs that were being shown. This action was interpreted as a compromise between the public's need for more responsible broadcasting and the individual's right to creative expression. Changes in the art of storytelling. The debate surrounding Gunsmoke and the eventual cancellation of the show had a discernible effect on how television series handled the art of narrative. In particular, when it came to issues of violence and moral ambiguity, writers and producers grew more cautious about the subjects they tackled in their work. Because the industry was eager to avoid a similar backlash, it started favoring narratives that were safer and more conventional, at least for some time. This transition affected the tone and content of many shows that came after it, notably in the Western genre, which was beginning to lose its supremacy on television. A display of pioneering. Even though it ended controversially, Gunsmoke continues to be a groundbreaking show that has left an everlasting effect on the history of television. One of the first shows to give a more complex and realistic representation of life in the Old West, it broke away from the simplistic good versus evil themes that had previously dominated the genre. It was one of the first shows to do so. The success of the show contributed to the establishment of television as a powerful medium for storytelling and paved the way for subsequent dramas that tried to explore stories with characters and themes that were more complicated. Implications for contemporary Westerns. There is evidence that Gunsmoke had an impact on the modern Westerns that came after it, both on television and in the industry of film. The television series, Gunsmoke, is responsible for stretching the boundaries of what a Western could be, and shows such as Deadwood, Justified, and Westworld owe a tribute to it. The legacy that Gunsmoke helped to establish is carried on by these shows, which continue the tradition of investigating the profound moral complexity and harsh reality of life on the frontier. Influence on culture. In addition to its impact on the genre, Gunsmoke also had a wider cultural influence all over the world. It was a show that resonated with viewers of different generations, contributing to their grasp of American history and identity, while also reflecting and changing their perspectives. The show's protagonists have become legendary personalities in American popular culture, and the show's themes of justice, survival, and moral ambiguity continue to be important in today's world. The persistent popularity of Gunsmoke reruns and the show's continued presence in discussions about the history of television are both evidence of the show's long legacy. If not for the controversy. I find it fascinating to speculate about what may have transpired if the television show Gunsmoke had not been canceled. The television program was still quite well liked at the time that it was canceled, and there was a possibility that it may have been renewed for several additional seasons. In the absence of the issue, Gunsmoke would have been able to explore themes that were even more intricate and adventurous, so contributing to the continued development of the Western genre and establishing new benchmarks for television drama. The creative team behind the program had plans for future seasons that would have pushed the characters and the series in new directions, potentially altering the trajectory of television history. These plans were intended to be implemented. Examining new subject matter. It was possible that future seasons of Gunsmoke could explore the shifting social landscape of the American West as it came closer to the 20th century. This was one of the possibilities. It would have been possible for the show to dive into the effects of industrialization, the growth of the railroad, and the collapse of the traditional lifestyle of the frontier. Gunsmoke would have been able to maintain its legacy of integrating historical realism with riveting drama if these subjects had been used. They would have supplied rich material for storytelling. A distinctive family tree. If the television show Gunsmoke had been renewed, its legacy may have been different. A series that gracefully matured and adapted to the changing preferences of its audience could have been applauded instead of being remembered as a program that ended in controversy. This would have been a more fitting way to remember the show. Following the end of the show, viewers were left wondering about the plots that were never revealed and the character arcs that were not concluded. The show's mystique and ongoing appeal can be attributed, in part, to the fact that it leaves a sense of unfinished business. How the television industry is moving forward. Gunsmoke was the first television show to be canceled, which signified the beginning of the end for the Western genre on television. As the decade of the 1970s drew near, the preferences of audiences began to shift, and the once dominant Westerns began to be eclipsed by other genres, including crime dramas, sitcoms, and science fiction. The Western world appeared to be more out of touch with present realities as a result of the cultural transformations that occurred in the late 1960s and early 1970s. These shifts included the countercultural movement and the rising dissatisfaction with traditional American ideals. One of the shows that defined an era. The television show Gunsmoke was more than just a show. It was a cultural touchstone that defined an era of television in the United States. For 20 years, audiences were intrigued by its depiction of the Old West, with all of its complexity and ambiguities. It also established a high bar for storytelling in the Western genre. The influence of the show stretched beyond the confines of the screen, shaping popular narratives about the history of the United States and the mythology surrounding the frontier. Storytelling as a family tradition. The storytelling approaches that were pioneered by Gunsmoke, such as its emphasis on character development, moral ambiguity, and realistic portrayals of violence, have had a long-lasting impact on the genre of television drama. It was the show's willingness to tackle difficult and contentious topics that opened the way for subsequent shows that aimed to push the boundaries of what television could accomplish. As a result of the many critically acclaimed dramas that have followed in its footsteps, Gunsmoke's legacy is clear. Each of these dramas builds on the foundation that the show helped to construct. One of the all-time greats. Gunsmoke is acknowledged as an enduring masterpiece that continues to resonate with audiences even in modern times. The show's themes continued to be relevant in a society where the lines between right and wrong are frequently blurred, and its reruns continued to attract viewers. For some who spent their childhoods watching Gunsmoke, the show continues to be a treasured component of their television experience. It serves as a remembrance of a period in which the Old West was brought to life on their televisions every week. Additionally, for younger generations that are just becoming familiar with the show, Gunsmoke provides a look into the ability of narrative to captivate the imagination and investigate the topic of the human condition. The increasing popularity of cable television. At the same time as Gunsmoke came to an end, there was a huge upheaval in the landscape of television, which was driven by the rise of cable television. Due to the proliferation of cable channels, viewers were able to access a more extensive range of programs, which included specialized channels that were devoted to particular types of programming and individual interests. This new era of television made it possible for a wider variety of artistic and experimental content to be produced, as well as the development of new narrative structures and methods of storytelling. The proliferation of cable television led to a fragmentation of the audience, which, while it presented difficulties for traditional networks, gave up new chances for the development of innovative programs. Impact of streaming services on the industry. The television industry has undergone significant transformation in recent years as a result of the proliferation of streaming services, which have enabled viewers to access a wide variety of material upon demand. People's ways of watching television have been revolutionized by streaming services such as Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime, which provide both classic episodes and brand new original programming. The dynamics of viewing have been transformed as a result of the availability of full series at the fingertips of viewers. This has made it feasible for audiences to binge watch and discover shows like Gunsmoke in a manner that was not conceivable during the show's initial run. Reruns are a powerful tool. One of the primary reasons that classic television series continue to be so popular is because of the influence of nostalgia. It is because of the repeats of Gunsmoke that new generations of viewers have been exposed to the series, which has provided them with the opportunity to experience the show in a different setting. Watching repeats is a method for many people to reestablish a connection with a more straightforward era, providing them with a sense of familiarity and consistency. The ongoing popularity of Gunsmoke repeats exemplifies the power of nostalgia in influencing how we see and value the history of television. Reevaluation of other cultures. When earlier television series are reevaluated through the prism of contemporary culture, this is done because society's ideals and conventions are constantly shifting. This type of reevaluation is something that is happening with Gunsmoke, just like it does with many other old television shows. Viewers and reviewers are analyzing how the show depicts historical events, societal issues, and gender roles. Through this process of reevaluation, one can gain a more profound comprehension of the show and the impact it had, as well as an appreciation for the show's position within the larger framework of the history of television entertainment. Having an impact on contemporary programming. The sentimental attachment to old television shows such as Gunsmoke has had an impact on present programming, with many shows of today drawing inspiration from the past. This impact may be observed in the resurgence of traditional genres, the homage to great series, and the incorporation of elements of storytelling that are already well known. By paying homage to shows such as Gunsmoke, contemporary television acknowledges the influence of its predecessors while simultaneously discovering new methods to engage and entertain audiences. Iconic theme song of the film. The theme tune for the television show Gunsmoke, which was composed by Jerry Goldsmith, is widely considered to be among the most influential and enduring pieces of music for television. The evocative melody and musical arrangement of the show's theme, which served to establish the tone for each episode, perfectly portrayed the spirit of the Old West by capturing its essence. When it came to defining the mood of the presentation and making the experience more enjoyable for the audience, the music was an essential component. The atmosphere and the musical score. The musical score of Gunsmoke contributed to the general ambiance of the show as well as the storytelling that it presented, in addition to the theme tune. The utilization of music as a means to accentuate dramatic moments, elicit feelings, and improve the atmosphere of the setting was an essential component of the creation of the performance. Because of the thoughtful selection and arrangement of musical cues, viewers were able to get more immersed in the setting of Dodge City, which in turn increased the impression that the narrative made. Music's influence on television. Television music was profoundly influenced by the success of Gunsmoke and the musical components that were featured in the show. How the show scored its episodes and how it utilized music to enhance the narrative established a benchmark for subsequent television shows. As a result of the effective use of music in Gunsmoke, composers and producers in the industry took note of it, which led to advancements in television scoring, as well as the creation of memorable and impactful soundtracks for subsequent series. The following of the cult. The original run of Gunsmoke resulted in the development of a devoted fan following, and this fandom has continued to flourish in the years that have passed after the show was canceled. Through the establishment of fan clubs, conventions, and online forums, Fans of the series have established communities, expressed their admiration for the show, and ensured that its legacy will be perpetuated. The deep connection that Gunsmoke has established with its viewers is reflected in the show's cult following, which is a testament to the show's enduring influence. Fan efforts to archive episodes, build fan websites, and organize reunions have all contributed to the preservation and celebration of the heritage of the television show Gunsmoke. Fans have played a key role in preserving and honoring the legacy of the show. The ongoing attraction of Gunsmoke is brought to light by these contributions, as are the various ways in which fans can exert influence and shape the legacy of a series that is universally cherished. Influence of the show on the culture of fans. Additionally, Gunsmoke has had a wide-ranging impact on fan culture, contributing to how television series are viewed and commemorated. A precedent has been established for how great television shows are remembered and treasured, and the show's large fan base has contributed to the formation of the landscape of fan involvement throughout this time. It is a credit to the show's significance in the world of television and its continuous relevance in fan culture that Gunsmoke has maintained its appeal throughout the years. Archiving and preservation of digital records. It is becoming increasingly critical to ensure that vintage television shows such as Gunsmoke are preserved as television continues to undergo progression. The availability of digital archives and streaming platforms presents the potential to guarantee that these shows will continue to be accessible to subsequent generations. New audiences can learn about and appreciate the shows that were crucial in the development of television because of the efforts that are being made to digitize and preserve old television content. These initiatives help to safeguard the historical record of television. Both remakes and revivals. An increasing number of people are interested in revisiting and reinventing previous triumphs, which is reflected in the trend of resurrecting and remaking great television shows. Although there have been no outright remakes of Gunsmoke, the show's influence may be observed in contemporary westerns and dramas that rely on its themes and storytelling techniques. Both of these types of films are examples of the show's influence. The resurgence of historic television concepts presents an opportunity to bring iconic series to new audiences while simultaneously paying tribute to the legacy of the TV shows themselves. A show that made it through. Gunsmoke was a television show that not only lasted for 20 years, but also made an indelible mark on the entertainment business as well as the culture of the United States. The fact that it was abruptly canceled because of a contentious sequence serves as a reminder of the potential that television has to question, challenge, and sometimes even upset its audience. However, it is also a demonstration of the show's capacity to push the limits of what television could be, so paving the way for future generations of storytellers to explore their creative potential. The Western world's appeal that will never fade. Indeed, the Western genre does not currently dominate the landscape of television, but its influence may still be seen in the present day. Gunsmoke was a significant contributor to the development of this genre, and its legacy continues to serve as a source of inspiration for new works of art. Gunsmoke continues to be a touchstone for individuals who are interested in comprehending the complexity of the American West and the everlasting allure of the Western narrative. This pertains to both reruns of the show as well as new interpretations of the show. The lessons it teaches. There are important life lessons that may be learned from the saga of Gunsmoke for both the television industry and its viewers. In doing so, it serves as a reminder that to write a compelling story, one must be willing to take risks, investigate challenging topics, and question the established order. It also underscores the significance of striking a balance between the freedom to be creative and the responsibility to be socially responsible, which is a dilemma that is still important in the media landscape of today. In the end, Gunsmoke is a reminder of the continuing power of television to entertain, educate, and inspire thought, and it continues to be a treasured part of the history of television in the United States.
If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon